There we go. Now we got the recording cue. Good morning, everybody. Today is Saturday, August 9th. We are already in August. There's 4 more months left in 2025.
Wow.
Right? Blink and time flies. The girls, my daughters, are about to start school again, so we just hit Staples. In case you're wondering, they have 35-cent spiral notebooks, college bound. We bought all of them, so they're going to get replenished soon. Like when you go school shopping with triplets, it's a lot of things, and we had to fight over the different colors for each subject, but it was kind of fun. Triplets, yeah, you didn't know
Triplets?
that? Yeah, you didn't know that, Rick?
No, I didn't know that, dude. I knew you were married, you had kids, but triplets is like,
Yeah, no,
wow.
they're now so three girls, which I think really counts for like 12 kids because they're all, so many opinions and so many damn words spoken every single day. But um, you know, but yeah, so they're rising juniors, and so now we're starting to look at colleges and all that stuff, and so it's kind of fun times, but we'll see what it turns into. But anyway, yeah, things are going well. We're going to actually have a bunch of new. Well, Rick is here, introducing Rick to the community, and we're going to have a bunch of new friends. We had 5 or 6 people sign up this week. Interesting. So I don't know if you guys follow me on online, but on Instagram, something happened where all of a sudden I'm really popular and like people are starting to follow me and stuff. And so we're almost at 50,000 followers, which is a lot. But yesterday, kind of a cool thing, Randy Travis, the country singer, followed me.
Really?
Like, yeah, I mean, I started listening to his music yesterday just in case somehow our paths crossed again. But I'm like, wow, that's actually kind of a cool thing, right? So we're getting the online presence and getting everything moving. And so it's nice because Rick's here. He's been in the program now for a couple of weeks, 3, 4 weeks. How long? 3 weeks. And is just like you guys are crushing it. But if this is a pretty timely, actually, lecture for you to pop into, because week three, I don't know how you guys feel, but week three for me is always kind of the hardest. It's like the Wednesday of the program. It's like hump day. You've already got half of it under your belt, but there's still half of that release phase to go, right? And so that's when a lot of cravings kick in and whatnot. And someone was sharing with me a recent diagnosis of some liver issues and how M&Ms are her foil and kind of all of these things. So the craving issue is real, and so I just randomly in the sequence it kind of came up, but I'm glad that it did. And we'll talk about that. Part of it is we are just by nature, if you think about kind of during caveman times, we are geared towards eating sweetness because it's calorie dense, right? That's why fruits are so much easier to eat than vegetables. If I had to eat like a pound of oranges, not that you'd eat a pound of oranges, but that would be a lot easier thing to take down than a pound of broccoli or a pound of carrots, right? Because we crave that sweetness, our body needs it. So we'll talk a little bit about the biology of cravings and some of the things that we can do, one of which is breath work, actually, and getting our heart rate variability into a more normal range, meaning if you're wearing the Whoop band, get it increased to show greater variability. But let's open up to before we get started in the breath work and everything. Any questions from you guys? Anything that's burning a hole in your brain? Something that you just need to ask? Other than I know I owe you guys like about 4 weeks of replays, so I'll get those loaded up to YouTube and send those out. But any questions? Yeah, Jane, go ahead.
We talked a little bit last time about perfect aminos, and I just read this morning on Mark Hyman that he said, it's better than whey for the protein.
Better source than whey protein?
Yeah, better than whey, better than eggs, better than meat as far as getting
Bi
that protein in. Is that
Yeah, so it's an issue of bioavailability. So last week, so the last 2 weeks we've been talking about supplements. Again, I'll send these replays out to you guys. And there's a particular supplement that I met their CEO a few months ago called Perfect Aminos. And what it is, proteins are strings of these things called amino acids. So you link these amino acids together. There's 20 amino acids, and then they make protein. So it's like 26 letters makes the alphabet. Words can be 1 letter long or 400 letters long, depending on when you watch the spelling bee and all that stuff, right? But each sequence and combination of letters has a different meaning, a different characterization. So similarly with these amino acids, they are the building blocks of protein. So different amino acid sequences will have different proteins and they fold and all these things. So when we talk about protein intake, there's a supplement called Perfect Aminos, which rather than doing like a whey protein or a vegetable protein type isolate where they're just taking random proteins out, this perfect aminos gives you um, the amino acids like as single Lego bricks, if that makes sense. So unattached. And so as a result of that, you're bypassing a lot of the digestion that needs to happen in the liver. And so it is more what's called bioavailable. So it's the proteins kind of hit your body a lot faster than otherwise. So it would be like the difference between like drinking like a beer and a shot of Everclear. If anybody ever has ever experienced Everclear like in college or whatever, it just hits you really hard, really fast, really ugly. And so similarly, then when we look at the bioavailability profile of whey protein or casein protein or even the vegetarian protein powders, when you take them in, they have to go in your stomach, they have to go to the liver, get digested, broken up into these component amino acids, and then shipped off to wherever it's needed through your bloodstream, be it muscle, be it brain, be it structural proteins, whatever it may be. So by bypassing that and giving just the amino acids in their pure form, you no longer have to waste energy or time digesting, so they just dump into your system a little bit faster. So, not surprising. I mean, they have that on their website. I'll get a link to those guys to Perfect Aminos, and then we can
Uh,
kind of put it out.
hey, dogs, isn't whey protein the leftover from something else, and they just market it, and that's why people's like, oh, it's great, but it's not because it's like the byproduct of something
Yeah, so it's
else.
yeah, so it's like after they like do something with milk, right? I don't remember if you remember, was it Little Bo Peep sat by her sheep eating her curds and whey, right? If I remember correctly. So it's a separation product from milk, and so as a result, because it's dairy, some people don't metabolize it very well. And this gets into a whole, I mean, maybe we'll talk about the biology of milk sometime, but there's all these different types of cows, Holstein and whatnot. And so there's like A1 milk protein and A2 milk protein. So most of what we get in the United States commercial farms is A1. Fairlife, if you guys know Fairlife milk, is the A2 milk, and that protein is more easily digested by humans. So that's why like in our house, my wife has an issue with dairy, so we get Fairlife so that she can have some. She doesn't still do well with it, but what you may be talking about there, Rick, is then because it's a dairy product, some people don't metabolize it well. So, like for me, for instance, I know I don't do well with whey protein. I use like the vegan source of protein. It just bloats me and gets me gassy and things. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
I think that's what it is. The Because a lot of water retention and it bloats you,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So,
Yeah.
so, so for me, I do vegetarian sources of protein. Your body can't tell the difference between electrons from vegetables and electrons from meat, to be honest with you, right? An electron is an electron. But I always talk about what's called the protein packet. So it's not just the protein itself, but all the other stuff that comes along with it. So when we're talking about whey protein or casein or any of these other things, oftentimes there'll be other things along for the ride, like other proteins along for the ride, that can be inflammatory. And if I didn't already in the recap, when I send out the recaps, I'll send the link to the podcast that I started. So I finally started the podcast, Denise and Bob. I don't know if you were here for that, called The Curious Cardiologist. And in the second episode, I talked to this woman, Dr. Robin Rose, who is she's like a kidney health expert, and she talks about this whole new um, uh, area of therapeutics called bioregulators or biomodulators, bioregulators, something like that. And these are very short chain proteins that can actually turn genes on and off. And we're talking about like 2 amino acids, 5 amino acids, basically what you'd be getting from a hamburger, right? And so now when we talk about how does your diet affect your genes, well, it could be that we're getting these bioregulatory peptides that are unwinding what's supposed to happen. So she has this whole host of bioregulatory peptides that she uses that are commercially available. So again, 2 to 5 amino acids long. We're talking about very small things like insulin as an amino acid as a protein. I think is like 50 to 70 amino acids long, right? So we're talking really short chunks here. But these but just as much as they can help you, these amino acid chains, sometimes they can hurt you as well, right? So they can work against you. So that's why what we eat matters, the foods that we eat matter, the ultra processing matters, all of these things matter. But you can't tell the difference between vegetable and animal protein at an elemental level, but it's all this other stuff that comes along for the ride. So that may be why some of the whey protein gets people bloated. You know, we've got the dairy, most adults over the age of like 25 will have some degree of lactose intolerance, so it may have to be with the residual sugars that are still available. Or I think sometimes when we talk about these inflammatory meats and things, there's probably some degree of these anti bioregulator proteins that are actually doing some unfolding. So that's a long way to say I do better with vegetarian protein powders. So the vegan protein powders I do better with. But now I've kind of moved away and I actually just eat protein. Like so I don't know like so I will I'm actually in a reset right now. So I'm kind of increasing my protein intake. So I am doing some shakes, but they're like the really not good tasting shakes because it's just pure protein without sugars or anything like that. So it's not stuff that I'm like excited about drinking, but just to keep up and build up muscle mass. But yeah, some people do better with vegetarian protein. Some people do better with animal protein. It just all depends on your body and what you can digest.
Well, with that in mind, my pulmonologist told me that whey protein and drinking milk, whey in the morning, have it with your coffee, and some kind of milk at night helps you sleep.
Maybe. I don't know that I would make blanket statements like that. I mean, there is some evidence actually for warm milk.
Oh, and builds muscle.
No,
That
I
was
mean, the muscle makes sense. The muscle is going to be protein building blocks, right? So that makes sense to me. I don't know if I can necessarily say it'll help you sleep because, like, if you are someone who inflames against dairy and you're drinking dairy before you go to sleep, your body is going to be in inflammation mode and all the stuff that we learn on the Whoop band or the Oura ring about how your body responds will be kind of tracked differently. So that sounds like kind of like, like old world wisdom, or, where like my grandmother would tell me things and turns out she was probably right a lot of the times, but on this one, I'm going to have to say I'm not sure. Like, I don't know that you can make a blanket statement like that for everybody.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, let's get into some breath work. I guess the gang is here who's going to be here. So today's breath work is going to be interesting for us. We do a lot of breath work that helps calm us down. But today I wanted to do something that kind of gives a little energy. So this is almost like the breathwork equivalent of a cup of coffee or a shot of espresso. So we're going to be doing some breath work. And Rick, I don't know if you've been done the breathwork sessions yet with us, but basically what we want to do is just have you kind of close your eyes, be in a relaxed environment, just chill. We have like 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 44 seconds for this track of just kind of getting in tune with your body, getting relaxed, feeling the earth support you. And then we start with then counted breathing. So initially we'll do what's called 4-4 breathing, which is where we breathe in for a count of four, out for a count of four. The music track will have all the cues for us. And then about 4 minutes in, we go to this faster 2-2 breathing. So we breathe in for two, out for two. My veterans, you guys know what we're talking about, right? But with that, that's then increases what's called the sympathetic response so that you get more energy. If for whatever reason that 2-2 is too fast, you can always just go back to the 4-4 breathing, take pauses as much as you like. And then after we do that 4-4 breathing, 2-2 breathing, we'll move into kind of an oasis in the middle where we try to do breath hold. So we'll take a deep breath in and hold for as long as your body allows, breathe out, and then we'll repeat one more time. So that's just the overview here. Let me, before everyone turns their cameras off, let me make sure that you can hear the track. So I'm going to play the music. Can you guys hear the music track?
Yes, but did you know that what's on screen is your personal Word
My
documents?
Oh, like my desktop?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I don't have anything.
Okay.
Don't have anything incriminating there. But so this screen here, like my home screen, that can't be very fun to look at. Hold on. Let's find something better for you to look at here when I share my screen. Not that I have let's see here. Always something. We'll give you a forest to look at. Let's see if that's better. All right, let's try this one more time here. All right, do you see a forest? All right, welcome everyone to today's breathwork session. And today, in our main session, we're going to be talking about the biology of cravings. When we talk about cravings, we're talking about those moments when something outside of us feels like it's pulling the strings. Something we're not consciously aware of, forcing itself upon us. Our session today is about reconnecting to the part of you that's in control, the calm center that can notice a craving, breathe through it, and make our choices from a place of strength rather than a place of desperation. Imagine a dial inside of you. One side is stress and urgency, and the other side is calm and clarity. As you take a deep breath in and out at your own pace, with each breath, picture yourself turning that dial toward calm. Let go of anything that you're holding on to from this week so far, and just remember that this is your time to reset. As we move towards this first round of our rhythmic breathing, remember to try to keep the rhythm smooth, like ocean waves flowing in and out. Initially, we'll be breathing in for a count of 4 and exhaling for a count of 4. And as you breathe, imagine that you're feeding your cells exactly what they need: oxygen, energy, and calm. Thereafter, we'll speed up our breathing. And take your final inhale and let it go completely. In that stillness, once the air is out, stay in a casual hold. Notice the quiet in between your breaths. This is your reset point. Your body is calm, your mind is clear, and your cells are nourished. Exhale when you need to. And again, take an inhale, and this time we'll hold on our inhale. If a thought or a craving shows up in this space, simply watch it and let it pass like a cloud across the sky. Stay in this pause until you feel the natural urge to breathe again. And when that happens, take a slow inhale and gentle exhale before you return to normal breathing. If it feels right to you, repeat the cycle of inhale, hold, and exhale at your own pace. Otherwise, just breathe mindfully, aware of the natural rhythm, just like those ocean waves coming into shore. Remember, here in this moment, we're simply reconnecting with our natural rhythm. This isn't a competition. There's no prize to win. We're just helping balance the stress and recovery inside of our body. Great job, everyone. Take your final inhale, let it go completely, and we'll do one last hold. In this stillness, connect with your inner control. You'll feel a craving to breathe, but try to push it off just a little bit longer than you think you could. Tap into that part of you that feels the impulse, and chooses how to respond. Exhale when you need to, and know that you are not your cravings. You are the calm observer who can decide when and how to nourish yourself. When you're ready, take a deep, full breath in, let it out slowly, and return to a natural, easy rhythm. As you open your eyes, try to carry this current sense of calm power into the rest of your day. The more you practice this, the more automatic it becomes. You are now learning that you are in control, not the craving. And when you're ready, we can turn our cameras back on and return to our time together. Okay. How are we feeling? Rick was crying. He was so into it. Love it. All right. Well, let's talk about cravings today. And let me get this PowerPoint pulled up here for us. So, how many of you guys have experienced cravings on the program? And how many of you have hands? Right? I mean, it's such a central part to our human existence. And a lot of times you know, there's these feelings of shame or guilt associated with cravings, but they are essential to our survival. And so today I wanted to talk about this because it hits a lot of people, and I think particularly, like I said, around that week, end of week two, beginning of week three kind of time. But what we need to do is kind of understand where they come from, and rewire our response. So that's really what it's about. And for me, all the time, the kids are here with all their sugar snacks and goodies. When I was in practice, you'd have the drug reps, as much as you tried to be compliant, bringing in cookies and cupcakes and those nothing bundt cakes that are just so good. Like there's like that lemon bundt cake that's so good. But what I learned is that, as much as you get that hit of the sugar and the dopamine and all that stuff, you experience a crash, right? So I kind of did a mind over matter thing, but it was really just like how we always say you can't hack what you can't track. I kind of became more in tune with what my body was experiencing as a part of these cravings. And so that was really helpful for me. But I just wanted to have that discussion with you guys today about what are cravings really, right? So a craving, and you've all experienced this, an intense desire for a specific food. And for most of us, it'll be sugar or refined carbs or some kind of quick hit. But when I think of cravings, really it's a cellular SOS signal. So our cells in our body, and we've talked about the metabolism and ATP and all the nerdy biochemical stuff that I love to talk about, right? It's an SOS signal from your cells saying, I need better energy or I need better nutrition. And I think this one mindset shift helps me kind of push through those cravings to understand really what is my body asking for, right? Because if you think about your cells, right? So we talked about amino acids and proteins and all this stuff, right? But if you're looking at your cells, not muscle, but individual muscle cells, not your brain, but individual cells in your brain, they have no way of communicating to your conscious mind what's going on, right? It can't say I'm low energy. We don't have like little like that up in the top corner of your phone. It says, 99% battery, 20% battery, whatever. There's no way to communicate that. So how does how does our body kind of tell our mind what we need to do? Well, it happens through our endocrine system, through our hormones that we'll talk about. So it's a ancient switch designed as a binary on or off. It's not like a dimmer switch, right? So when our bodies are not feeling properly nourished, when our cells are not properly nourished, they will send signals to upregulate. We'll talk about in a moment the hormones of satiety that we've spoken about at length before. And tell our brain, hey, you know what? I need to eat something. So cravings aren't necessarily a bad thing. I think they're part of being human because it's a survival mechanism really hardwired into our biology. So in the same way, like Bob and I were talking about growing a beard before, right? Before we got on camera. So I can't like think my way into growing a beard, right? That's just something that happens, right? So we can't think our way out of a lot of these cravings, generally speaking, until we're giving our body what it needs. So when I said raise your hand, everybody said that they had cravings. But when you're eating healthy, how many of you are having fewer cravings on a regular basis, right? Because why? Because your body is getting the nutrition that it needs. So now you're no longer getting these distress signals from your cells because you're providing yourself ample nutrition. And I know for me, once I got into week 4, cravings kind of went down, particularly because all those like there's the psychological component, but there's a biological component we'll talk about. And now is working through that psychological component and really kind of understanding cues for the biological stuff. So I talked about these hormones here. This will be a review for some of us. So insulin is that hormone that drives sugar, glucose into cells. And when we get a drop in our insulin level, it drives a sugar craving. So how many of you guys have like a crash after you eat like a heavy meal, right? So what's happening is your insulin level is spiking. You've got all this sugar all of a sudden. So your insulin is spiking. And then you get that crash because now your glucose level goes down and your insulin level drops, and now your body is like, what happened? We're doing so well for a while. All of a sudden you get this crash. Now you need something else, right? And this happens actually with smokers. I know none of you guys are smokers, probably, hopefully, but someone was telling me I was speaking to someone this week, and they were saying, yeah, I never like to hire smokers because they only work until that next hit. Right. So that's why you have to go out and smoke every 2 hours or what I've never been a smoker. So whatever it is, because your brain works and then you just kind of get this crash and nothing happens until you get that next hit. Well, the same thing happens with sugar is that we get these spikes up and down and they kind of drive into our day. Ghrelin, if you remember, is the hunger hormone. So this is what rises before meals to cause us to eat. And so when we're getting that crash, your ghrelin level can shoot up because your body says, hey, you know what? Something is weird going on here. We're getting this dip in our energy source. So we need to secrete this hormone ghrelin. Leptin, if you remember, is the satiety hormone. And as we put on more visceral fat, that's the fat around our organs, not the pinchable, lovable stuff, it decreases our brain's ability to respond to leptin. So you get what's called leptin resistance. So in fact, we never feel full. And so that's one of these weird biochemical glitches that, our new operating system needs to be fixed in the version 2.0 of humans. But the more you eat, the more visceral fat you put on, the less your brain understands that you're full. And so we just get stuck in the cycle. So when we talk about people who, are gaining a lot of weight, oftentimes we have to resensitize their body to leptin. So it's not a willpower issue, which I think unfortunately a lot of people realize, or a lot of people rather kind of ascribe it to, but rather it's this abnormal hormone mechanism that's happening that we have to break. And that cycle needs to be broken. And remember, we like to feel good, right? We like to do things that feel well. That's why we like to laugh, and that's why we like to do things that are fun because we get this dopamine hit. So when we are getting these foods that then are are giving into our biological needs, like you have a donut because your body is craving foods, that gets an associated dopamine response, an associated hit. And a lot of times, and I don't know if we've talked about this, but the same receptors in our brain that light up when somebody is given illicit drugs like heroin or whatever, those are the same pleasure receptors that light up when we're eating sugary foods. So that's another thing. I'm like, man, this is just not a good thing, right? So we're getting those dopamine hits in these areas of intense pleasure. And that's what we get conditioned to, like that Pavlov's dog that salivated every time it heard a bell. We then get conditioned to these cravings that every time I give into a craving, I feel better about myself, my body is happy, all these things, but ultimately we're unwinding ourselves. So why do we naturally crave sugar? Well, number one, realize that Snickers and Twix and all these things were not available thousands of years ago, as best as I can tell, right? And so we had this evolutionary adaptation to use sugar as a quick energy source, right? But remember that these energy sources all came with some degree of peril, right? So if it's orange, you had to like climb into the tree, apples, you had to climb into the tree, whatever. Honey, you had to put up with bees, right? And try to get at it. So we had these quick sources of energy that were necessary for survival, particularly if you're not eating on a regular schedule like most of us are eating on a regular schedule now. So there's this forced phase of intermittent fasting that ancestrally and anthropologically humans had that we don't have right now, right? And now with Uber Eats, you don't have to go 20 seconds without anything. I actually just used Uber Eats for the first time the other day. We got a coupon and the girls wanted a pizza, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe how easy this is to get food, right? And so it just becomes easy. Those barriers to entry kind of go away. So now we can get these quick energy sources for survival. And fruit was not common. Like if you look in some countries like Japan, for instance, they don't have the agricultural space to devote to food. That's why Japanese fruits are so expensive when you go to Japan. They just if you're gonna dedicate agricultural space, they prefer rice and other grains and other crops as opposed to fruit. So these were not things that were readily available, these high sugar sources. So we were allowed to take pleasure in them to maximize intake. In fact, the other day, my mother-in-law brought mangoes over. Indian people love mangoes, and I forgot how good mangoes are. They're lovely as a fruit, right? But they were rare, but now you get them all the time. And so our metabolism and our brains and our bodies were not designed for that. And this modern abundance, as I mentioned, hijacks this ancient wiring, creating constant triggers. We're always in the mood for something. And before you got to well 12, and I think one of the hardest things, I just did a discovery call with someone who's joining us in a few weeks. But her biggest concern was cravings and these cravings that she got. That's actually part of the reason why the talk came together was as I was talking to her, I was realizing, wow, we never talked about it. But when you're giving your body the things that it needs, that volume on the craving speaker just kind of goes down because now your body doesn't have these urgent needs. At a cellular level, remember, again, I'm not going to get too biochemical on you guys, but cells run on glucose for quick fuel. It's your brain's preferred energy source. So there's a biological reason for us to get it. Remember, fructose is a is a sugar as well that kind of bypasses some of the glucose metabolism. So in some ways, fruit sugar hits us a little bit differently than other sugars do that we can get from carbohydrates. But when we talk about cravings, our brain can't differentiate between the things that we need and like what we actually need and what it can tell us because, like I mentioned, these cravings are a binary source. So sometimes it's micronutrient deficiencies. I talk a lot about magnesium, but and B vitamins, but chromium is another thing that can amplify sugar cravings. So if someone really has a ton of craving, oftentimes giving them some chromium will help because what they're craving isn't necessarily the sugar itself, but their cells are saying something is not working in this pathway, and we need to replenish these micronutrients, the trace elements, and that's why a lot of times, again, week 3, week 4, those cravings go away because now with the healing foods that we promote in Well 12, we have now replenished your body supply of magnesium and these B vitamins through natural mechanisms and these micronutrient deficiencies like chromium and selenium and others that are giving your cells what they need. So now you're able to work on a regular basis. And then the mitochondrial stress, inflammation, sends this energy shortage signal. And I tell people, we've probably talked about this. I don't know who I've told what to, so you guys are like the people that probably get the brunt of all my repeat stories. But our bodies are meant to run pretty well, but sometimes when we have inflammation, it's like one of those apps that's running in the background of your phone and is just draining battery, right? So like if you had like a GPS app, that's the one that I think runs the battery the most on my phone, at least. So if you forget to turn that off, your battery goes from like 80% to 30% in the matter of 20 minutes, and you're like, boy, what's going on? Well, you've got this app that just keeps cycling, 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 cycling. So similarly, when you have a lot of inflammation, that's just using up energy, using up energy, using up energy. So our that puts our mitochondria, which are little powerhouses that create energy for ourselves, right, in our bodies, that puts them on high alert, but also as a result of that, we're not able to get rid of the waste products. So we're building up all of these waste products, these acids, these reactive oxygen species inside our mitochondria that puts us in this state where we're not as fuel efficient as we need to be. And so that sends signals to our body again as to an energy shortage. This is also why sleep is one of those things that we focus on because sleep allows us time for our body to recover. So if we're not sleeping adequately, all those cells, the mitochondria, our brain, all these things are not able to get rid of those waste products. It's like that tank in Finding Nemo, if you ever saw Finding Nemo, when they stop the filter, right? And what happens? Algae grows in there, right? So if we're not sleeping, if we're not resting adequately, we can't take all the metabolic waste products out of our cells. All that stuff builds up. Everything works kind of more inefficiently, and we get tired and our body isn't able to generate energy and we get cravings and all these things. So that's why you can't just focus on one aspect. That's why we focus on stress and sleep and diet and all of the things that we do because we're trying to heal you. We're trying to heal you at a cellular level. So stress, as I mentioned just now, is one of those intrinsic things that we focus on. Stress drives cravings. How does it do that? Through the stress hormone called cortisol. So when we are physiologically stressed, that increases our cortisol. Cortisol is a hormone that's meant to be a quick action, rapid action hormone. You're walking and all of a sudden a tiger jumps out at you. You need a quick hit of energy to run the F away as fast as you can, right? So cortisol, the stress hormone, will increase our blood sugar immediately. And then our body then has these other compensatory mechanisms to stop that from happening, insulin spikes to avoid the crash and cravings. So what we see here then is this stress response leads to so not talking about a tiger jumping out, but now our chronic, everyday multitasking, everything is going wrong, stress that we're always exposed to increases our cortisol. Remember, cortisol is supposed to be a one and done kind of hormone, but now our cortisol is chronically elevated that in turn increases our blood sugar. That in turn increases our insulin response. That in turn increases our desire for sugar and sweet. That's just hormones, guys. That's all that is, right? So what we need to do is break the cycle. That's why oftentimes when people are in program and they're reaching a plateau, one of the first things that Kyle will tell you is, how's your sleep, right? Because what we need to do is break that response, get you to sleep, get out of that stress mode, and then all the stuff kind of naturally falls into place. Let's see, and then yeah, chronic stress, stronger, more frequent cravings, and difficulty resisting them. And there's studies that show that when you're under constant stress, you will make poor diet decisions, right? Why? Because when you're in a situation of stress, you need calories because our bodies perceive this as a fight or flight mode. So you will automatically always gravitate towards the higher dense calorie options. So if there's a donut or a piece of fruit, you will always, humans, not just you guys, but humans will always choose the higher calorie dense food. So what can we do to kind of overcome this? Well, that's why we do breath work. That's why we're looking at our stimulation and our response, because what we want to do is go into our rest and digest, that parasympathetic nervous system where we're more calm, right? Deep breathing, stretching, mindful eating, humming is another one that does this. Cold exposure does this. Laughing does this. Is it puts us in that parasympathetic calm down mode that improves our digestion, stabilizes blood sugar, and counteracts that craving cycle. And when we are more relaxed, we are less prone to emotional triggers, right? Think about, I'm sure you guys never have it, but if there's a heated argument with your spouse or your partner or whatever, and you're already kind of charged up and they breathe funny, right? You jump on them for their breathing, right? You are triggered by a small stimulus, right? So, but when you're in a calm state, you're just like, whatever, that's just how they breathe, or chewing with their mouth open, or whatever it might be, right? So when we are in this parasympathetic mode, this calm down mode, these triggers that would normally set off alarm bells for me to run to the pantry and go find some chocolate or go find some whatever, if we're in that calm state, it just doesn't hit you as hard and your body isn't as reactive. And so that's why we really want to be in this rest, repair, digest mode as much as possible. And then I was talking about this psychological versus biological cravings. There's a difference. I was accustomed to every night before I went to bed having a spoonful of peanut butter because I felt that helped me sleep, not realizing that that was causing inflammation and making me sleep worse, right? But I always had that in my mind. Okay, this is my wind down routine. For a lot of people, it's ice cream on the sofa when they're watching their 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock television show, right? I think people in program have talked about that several times times. And we just cue again, like that dog, that Pavlov's dog, is that, if this happens, then that happens, right? If I'm sitting on the sofa watching Law and Order reruns, then I have to have ice cream in my hand, right? That's a psychological cue that's a little bit easier to be broken. Biological cue is a nutrient or energy need, and they're a little bit different. We need to overcome what we think is hunger when it's just a psychological cue, and that's why I say, if you start to feel that cue that you want to eat, go out for a walk or get away from that whatever that stimulus is for 10 minutes and see if you're still feeling hungry or still feeling that desire. And another one that I came across is what's called the apple test. It has nothing to do with Steve Jobs, but just say, what, if I ate an apple right now, would it satisfy me, right? Would I feel okay? Apples have a ton of fiber. It has that sweetness in there, and it gives you kind of what your body is craving on a biochemical level. So if yes, if eating an apple does help you, then it's likely a biological craving. It is a necessity of your cells. If no, you have an apple and you still feel the urge to eat whatever it is, then it's probably a psychological craving, right? And so that's something that then you need to work through. One of the things that I like to do is tell people to do box breathing at that point. And why? Because remember, box breathing will help, which is where we breathe in for a count of four, hold for a count of four, breathe out for a count of four, and hold for a count of four. So you're doing this kind of rhythmic breath holding. That puts us into that parasympathetic rest, repair, digest mode a little bit faster. So you can kind of turn down that volume knob on the craving to really see if it's something that you need. So strategies to outsmart cravings. Number one, when you have a meal, eat your protein first. What does that do? A couple of things. It tones down that insulin spike that we get. And as a result of that, it keeps our blood sugar steadier for longer. If you have like fat in your meal, like let's say you're having like yogurt and berries or something like that, have more yogurt first. That the fat in the yogurt, which dairy has fat or whatever, will kind of keep that full longer. And then it also will reduce then the dumps of sugar from the berries. All the berries are a low glycemic food, but it'll prevent that from happening. So now your body won't go through these cycles of up and down to again turn down that volume knob on cravings. One of the other things is if you do feel a craving, particularly a psychological one, as you're watching Law and Order, that's my show. I think I've gotten to the point where there's like 26 seasons and I watch repeats. Like I know from the first 5 seconds, when they find the dead body in the alley or whatever, I'm like, oh, I remember this one. This is the one where the guy is the finance guy and he kills his wife because for the money and he has the girlfriend in the apartment, whatever. But one of the things that you can do to curb cravings is rather than, particularly if they're psychological, rather than giving in, is just drink water, right? Water gives you full, it gives you that sensation of digestive kind of movement. You need to stay hydrated in the program anyway, but it can really help kind of curb some of those cravings that we have because sometimes our brains can't distinguish between thirst and hunger. I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually something that happens. So sometimes when you think you're hungry, you're actually really just thirsty, and water will do the trick. Sleeping, we talked about that. So prioritize sleeping 7 to 9 hours. That's that sweet spot. 7.5 hours seems to be the key. That's quality sleep, and that more importantly, not quantity, but quality of sleep. That stage three, stage four, kind of deeper sleep is going to help put your body in that rest, repair, digest mode. In the brain, there's this system called the glymphatic system that helps us get rid of waste products. Um, our bodies will be able to get rid of the cellular debris while we sleep. So that becomes really important because when you're sleeping, all your body is worried about is repair, right? And then fill nutrient gaps. And that's what we do in Well 12 naturally, is that we're doing the magnesium, chromium, B vitamins, again, through natural food sources, which are more bioavailable. We're talking about the perfect aminos supplement being bioavailable, but but natural vitamins in their natural form are really what we need to fill these nutrient gaps. And over time, as you replenish those stores, those cravings will go away. Other things to do to reward your or to rewire these reward pathways is replace sugars with non-food pleasures. So again, that's why if you feel that desire to have that bowl of ice cream on the sofa, go for a walk, do something different. Choose naturally sweet foods, so berries with cinnamon. I know Coach Kyle talks about that all the time as his substitute. And then a gradual reduction in these ultra processed foods retrains your taste buds to be more sensitive to natural sweetness. I've talked about my deep addiction to Oreo cookies several times with you guys. I was like, I couldn't get enough Oreo cookies, and now because my taste buds are so programmed differently, now when I have an Oreo on the rare occasions that I do, it just tastes like chemicals to me. That's all I can taste because my palate has now been so sensitized to natural sweetness. Breathwork break, I mentioned this. You can do 4-4 breathing. The box breathing activates our parasympathetic state. Cravings will shift, and it's something that you can do anywhere. In fact, I do this during stoplights when I'm at a red light. I just do a box breath for the duration of the stoplight, and it's just one of those everyday tactical things I do to kind of calm myself down. So as we kind of put it all together, remember, cravings are messages from your body that something is out of balance. It's not an enemy to be overcome, and it is difficult to use willpower to overcome these things because they're so hormonally driven in the same way that you can't think your way out of having your period or thinking out of your way out of growing a beard, right? These are natural processes in our body. So we have to honor them. We have to be aware of the why behind them, but kind of see through the initial veneer to give our body really what's being desired behind the scenes, which is not sweetness, but there's some micronutrient deficiency or there's something more our body needs. Activate and balance our parasympathetic nervous system that will turn down the volume knob on these nutrient cravings. As I mentioned, understanding the roots, the origins, the root cause, right, of why these cravings exist in the first place and understanding the drivers. And then as a weekly challenge here, not that you guys will need it, but replacing one sugar heavy snack with a well 12 alternative of fruit or something, and notice the difference in how you feel. Every once in a while, where was I? I was somewhere. I think we were traveling. We had so much travel, and at one of the airports, I kind of gave in and had a box, or not a box, the a bag of chocolate covered pretzels, which I almost never have. And for the moment when it was mouth in my mouth, yeah, it was delightful. But then I just felt so gross afterwards. Not like guilty gross, but just biologically sick afterwards. And I'm like, boy, I'm not doing that again for a while. Or that happens to me now on the rare occasions where I'll have like a slice of pizza or something. I just feel so gross that I'm like, oh yeah, now I remember why I don't do this anymore. Right? So that's cravings in a nutshell. We went a little over time. What questions do you guys have at all, if anything? Done. We got it. I nailed it. 10.0, stuck the landing. All right. All right, lovely. Oh, Rick, do you have something? Or just,
Uh, yeah, just more of a comment. Sometimes when I get a craving and I'm like, oh, I really want a, medium rare, steak, right?
yeah.
The first thing is it the steak that I want? And then I quickly search what what does meat provide? And I'm like, I'm probably missing iron,
Hmm.
right? And then I try to look for something else, right? Because 8 ounces of a steak is like, oh my God, but 8 ounces is too much, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that whenever the craving hits me, I'm always thinking, it's like, what does that have in it that my body's asking for it? And
Yeah.
the only thing is that's what I know. Oh, steak, oh yeah, medium rare, right? Iron.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's great. That's part of that awareness, right, that you have now or that you've had before, connecting kind of it's like when your kid freaks out about something, like my daughter freaks out about something, and I'll be like, okay, I know you're not really kind of upset with the way that I'm breathing, right? Or so what is the why behind this? What is really happening? And this is like the upfront, the face of the problem, but there's something hiding behind the scenes, right? So it's just exactly what you're doing is looking at the cravings that you're having, and our body will accustom certain things, will get used to certain foods as remedies for certain desires of ourselves, right? So yeah, when you're craving a food, kind of understanding what's behind that, and steak, nothing wrong with steak, right? So that's actually okay. But like, let's say you're craving like a beer or a piece of cheesecake or whatever it might be, right? Kind of understanding, okay, what's behind that, and what is it that my body really needs from this? Is it you're craving a beer because you're out with friends and it's a psychological thing? Do you need relaxation? Is there something like that going on? Because you don't have like a malt and hops deficiency, right? That's not a something. There's something behind that, right? You don't have a Cabernet deficiency. There's something behind that, right? So what are we really looking at? And are we using food as a crutch or kind of like a self-soothing mechanism versus is there a cellular need for something like iron or something more elemental? So I think it's great that that you've already been able to do that work to connect the dots for that. So good that you have that insight.
Yeah, I just wanted to share it. So, I mean, I guess, people know that, but if you don't, just kind of like, oh, what is it that I'm missing?
Yeah,
Something else. Right. And I use a steak because that was one of the things, like I was missing iron in my diet.
yeah.
Right. Because there was a lot of chicken, a lot of lean meats. And I'm like, so there's like, no, I need more, iron.
Yeah, you need something, and in fact, like my wife, I remember one time, I can't believe this was when we were early married. Like for some reason, she just really wanted a steak, and so we went out to dinner and we had a steak, and she just felt so great afterwards. Like she's like, "Wow, I want to have steaks every day," and I'm like, "No, I don't think that's it. I think your body needed something in here. So it may have been iron or whatever. Maybe it was an amino acid bump that she needed, or who knows. But yeah, I mean, our bodies are smart. Nature is smart, right? Like it kind of tracks all this stuff for us. We just don't have the scorecard sometimes to understand exactly what it's asking for. So I think that's great share. I love it. All right, anything else, guys?
What is this Sanjay's Phantom note
Oh,
taker?
Fathom. So it's an AI kind of robot or whatever that sits in on all my meetings and it gives me a summary of everything, so I know who was when, who was there, what we talked about. It's actually pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, go enjoy your weekend. Do something epic outside. Looks like it's shaping up outside the window here to be a good day. Hopefully, it won't get too hot too quickly. And do something epic, and I'll send out all of the replays, and I'll catch you next week.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Bye.